This is the Investor Connect podcast program. I'm Halti Martin. I'm the host of this show in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, family offices, private equity, and many other investors for early stage and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today we're here with Gary Trauner of Silicon Couloir. Gary, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Hall. Really appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Great. So what was your background before investing in early stage companies? What did you do before this?
I've got a pretty varied background, but really at the end of the day, I've got a financial business background. I've got an MBA from the Stern School at NYU and worked in what I call small scale venture capital startups, 0 to 50 million, $100 million startups, helping them put their internal controls in place, raise money, et cetera. But then I grew up in New York State, lived in New York City for a while. 30 years ago, my wife and I were lucky enough to make the big leap and move out to a place nobody had ever heard of at the time called Jackson Hole, Wyoming. We've been here for 30 years. It's changed a lot over the years. And I've done a bunch of different things. I've been the chief operating officer of the hospital, the regional medical center here. I've been engaged in some politics. I've run for U.S. House and U.S. Senate. Didn't win, but ran the closest race in the country for U.S. House in 2006. Not really a politician, but I felt like I could make a difference. And now I'm engaged with Silicon. I've started several companies as an entrepreneur myself in different fields, in investment and finance, in technology and ISP, in retail. So I've been involved in a bunch of different startups. And now I'm running a nonprofit, as you mentioned, called Silicon Couloir here that supports entrepreneurship in our region.
Well, great. So what excites you right now?
What excites me right now? So we live in for people that may or may not be familiar with the geographic location of Jackson Hole, it's in northwest Wyoming. It's become an incredibly wealthy place. Teton County, Wyoming has the highest per capita income of any county in the country. So we have a huge amount of intellectual and financial capital here. It's also one of the most beautiful places literally on earth. We're right next door to Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Parks. People have moose and bears and wild animals roaming through their yards. So it's an incredibly special place to live as well and to protect our natural resources. So what excites me are the folks out here that are working on startups and growth companies and doing it within the context of what we call community caretaking, trying to make sure we find a way that we have a diverse and healthy economy, but at the same time, we keep the characteristics of this place that make it so special. And that's a challenge. It's not an easy thing to do, but there are people that are doing it, entrepreneurs, and there are companies that are working towards that end, and it's a fun thing to be a part of.
Well, great. Well, you work with startups and you work with investors in those startups. What's your advice for those investing in startups? What do you tell them to do first before they write that check?
Wow. So having been on the other side of the fence and having raised money as an entrepreneur, and so being on both sides, to me, it always starts with the management team. People invest in management. You invest in people that you think have the capability to take their idea and make it successful. I think that if someone has the best idea in the world, that might just blow the doors off everybody, but you don't think they have the capability of taking that idea and turning it into reality and managing and doing what it takes, the hard work it takes to start and grow a company. I'd much rather invest in an idea that may not be revolutionary, but I know the team is successful, they've executed in the past, and they can execute in the future. So number one for me is making sure that the management team and the folks in place are the ones that can get things done. The other thing that I look for is scale. So the ability to scale in a way that makes sense to me. So it depends on the marketplace. Our angel group doesn't look at a specific industry. We look at people in all different sorts of industries, but the ability to scale and to ensure that you've got either a first mover advantage or barriers to entry are important. So those are probably the three biggest things for me when I look at companies and when our group starts to look at companies.
So on the other side of that table, what do you advise startups to do before they launch that business?
So I'm a big believer in process. I think a lot of people, for example, have this romantic notion that people sat in beanbag chairs and shot Nerf hoops at the wall at Google and somehow this huge company happened. And it doesn't really work that way. And maybe that's just my background in sort of finance and accounting and structure and process. But I tell entrepreneurs to write their business plan. And because I think the exercise itself helps them to think through the different aspects of their business as they're doing it. And I do tell them to put together a group of people that they think are capable moving through the seed and the development and seed stages at least. Management teams change and needs change, but you need to put together, it doesn't have to be folks that are necessarily on your payroll day one. You can have an advisory board. You can have a real board of directors. There's different ways to do it, but make sure you've got the team in place and that you've really thought through all the aspects of your business by putting together a pretty significant business plan and putting it to the rigorous intellectual test as you're doing it.
Well, very good. So let's talk about the state of investing in startups. A lot's changed over the last few years with new models, new funds, and new structures. But how do you see the industry evolving? What changes do you see coming up in your area?
It is evolving. And I think, just in our angel group specifically, we started out as a bunch of individuals that at the end of the day, our group would individually decide whether they were interested in investing in a presenting company, and then individually get in touch with that company and try and work things out. And we realized that doing due diligence as an individual is a difficult thing to do sometimes. So we are working towards putting together more of a group-oriented effort where Silicon Couloir, as sort of the administrator of the angel group, will put together an entity like an LLC and be the one responsible for doing the due diligence and the work. And investors can actually invest through the LLC as opposed to directly in the company. The LLC will invest in the venture. And it's a way to maintain control. It's a way to take the burden of accounting and bookkeeping and due diligence off of individual investors. And it just makes it a little bit more efficient. So that's one way we're moving in a direction that we think makes more sense over time. Obviously, being more virtual in a world where technology makes it a little bit easier to do some due diligence is a place where we're looking at putting some more effort in as well. But I do think that nothing really replaces that in-person give and take, that when you have entrepreneurs or folks that are running companies that are looking for capital at whatever stage of their business, for them to come in person and meet your investor group, and you get a chance to get a feel for who those people are. You get to see them actually and see the way that they react to questions, see how they make presentations. There's really no real substitute, in my view, for that initial and ongoing in-person communication.
Great. So let's talk about your investment thesis for your group. What exactly is a thesis? And in particular, what are the specific parameters you require before you'll fund? For example, do you require revenue or do you not require revenue?
Right. So I think here, Hall, might be a good place for me to step back for a second, maybe explain just a little bit deeper about what Silicon Couloir, who we are and what we do. We're a 501c3, so we're a charitable organization. And we operate in what we call the Idaho region of Western Wyoming, because while Jackson Hole is the hub, Jackson's become very expensive. And so a lot of the outlying rural areas, people commute into work. And we're right on the border of Idaho. So right on the other side of the Teton Mountain Range, there are some communities called Briggs and Victor, Idaho. They're part of what we consider our business region, and some other communities in Wyoming as well that are regional. So we call it Idaho. We're regionally based, and we have programmatic offerings for entrepreneurs and growth companies, and we call it founding to funding. So we want to have a program offering at whatever stage you are in your company's growth or where you're starting. So we team up with a community college here, Central Wyoming College, to offer a boot camp for startup entrepreneurs, maybe people who've never done it before and have really no idea what it takes. We have a teams mentoring program that we've licensed from MIT out of Boston, where we take some of the people that have moved here who have been incredibly successful in business, and they mentor for free. They mentor companies that are growing companies or entrepreneurs that are starting their journey. We have a pitch day, which we call it Shark Tank Teton style, which is our day where we show off at our local Performing Center for the Arts in front of hundreds of people. We get 6 companies. It's a competition. They can win cash prizes. They can also get in front of potential board members and investors, and it's a way to show our community what we're doing here. And then we have our angel group. We also own a co-work space, kind of like WeWork here in Jackson, where people that are starting their journey can, of course, have a communal professional workspace without a large outlay of cash or money or a long-term commitment. So we have a range of programs, and the angel group sort of fits into the tail end of that, whereas we want to be able to give entrepreneurs and growth companies the ability to actually put their ideas into action by raising funds. So that being said, we don't look for specific industries. Again, we tend to focus on companies that are birthed in our region. And we also, there is a little bit of social value involved. The companies do not have to be triple bottom line companies or social value companies, but we want to know that they're willing to take care of their employees and their staff, that they're paying, living wages and taking care of them, and they recognize what staff adds to the equation. And we also want to know that in some way, shape, or form, even if you're a hard cider brewery, you're going to try to find a way to give back to your community, because we feel strongly that companies don't operate in a vacuum. They operate in a community, and the private sector is one of the places where you can have the biggest impact on making sure that you've got a diverse economy, a healthy community that's still there for current and future generations. I mean, again, because this place is so special in its natural resources, that's kind of where we focus. So our companies we like them to be post-revenue, although if we feel that they have a strong enough management team and a well-developed enough idea, we will consider developmental and seed round companies, and we have. But we would prefer that they've at least gone out there and started to show that they can prove that they've got a revenue source, or that they can generate revenue. Outside of that, again, we focus primarily on a geographic distribution. We do take companies from a little further outside of our realm, maybe other places in Wyoming, or we may consider a company where the management team is based here, but they've got a connection to our region in some way, shape, or form. So it's pretty loose, I think. But again, social value and a commitment to community and people. It's one of our touchstones is profits, people, and planet. We understand entrepreneurs and companies need to make a profit to survive, but we also want them to give back to their people and give back to their community. So
can you talk about one or two startups that fit that thesis, perhaps a portfolio or two, and what they do?
Sure. So one of the companies that's come before us recently is a company, I hope I can give their name out, but they're called Vertical Harvest. And what they do is incredibly unique and incredibly special. They have built a greenhouse on a piece of land that otherwise would not be suitable for anything in downtown Jackson, Wyoming. And it's vertical. It's 5 stories high, roughly. And they grow microgreens and other vegetable goods, and they sell them to local restaurants and distribute them to local grocery stores. So it's kind of a local food movement. One of the things they do that's special is they utilize folks that are, I'm not sure what I'm going to get in trouble here, right, with the right word, but people that are developmentally disabled. Most of their staff are folks that would have trouble getting to the workforce normally and are developmentally disabled. And they hire a lot of their help from that community. And it's been an incredible thing for that community, for the people in our region and our valley, and they're looking to expand. So and they've shown that they've got a business model that works. They're very successful in selling to local restaurants, and we have extremely high-end restaurants here and grocery stores, and they've been very successful in getting their products out and distributing them and having the uptake that they want to have. So that's one example of a company that really is doing social good at the same time that they're becoming successful financially. Another company that came in recently is a company that, again, is not based in our region, but has connections to people that are living here. And we brought them in, and they're called Community Data Platforms. And they're looking to provide data to communities, including Jackson is one of the communities that they're working with right now, to ensure that when decisions are made about building a hospital or building out a mass transit system, or any of these decisions that the public sector is making that impacts a community, that those decisions are based on hard data that is compiled using proprietary software and analyzed, And it's a really cool concept that is looking at sort of efficiency in the workplace and efficiency in communities that we love. So, those are two examples. I'll give one third example, which is very much Jackson related. There's a woman who started a company recently called Mountainist, and she is involved and engaged in essentially motorsports, outdoor sports, but motor recreation. So snow machining, motocross, ATVing, recreational activities. And what she found was women are sort of have been viewed historically from a gear perspective and a clothing and a safety perspective as a little bit of a footnote and a side note. So she found that her friends, when they went out with her, were wearing their husbands or their spouses or their significant others' clothing, their old football helmets, gear that wasn't safe, didn't look good. She's starting a kind of rent the runway type of company where she is going to rent curated gear to women specifically for these types of activities. And she's early stage, but she seems to be having great success. She's gung-ho. She's got a great team behind her. It's related to our region and the outdoor sports that we all love. So it's a really cool concept and we like it. So those three might give you a good idea also of how varied we are from an industry perspective. We like management and concept, not necessarily specific industries.
So you have a great group of entrepreneurs there. Congratulations. And you deal with a lot of entrepreneurs every day in your area. What do you think is the biggest challenge they face in starting up their business?
Well, we do have some very specific challenges to us regionally here. And first and foremost is for us here, the cost of living. Again, Jackson, Teton County, Wyoming has the highest per capita income of any county in the country. On the flip side of that, if you sort of remove the top 15% of tax returns filed in Teton County, the remaining roughly, and I might not get this exactly right, but this is close enough, the remaining 85% or so of tax returns filed are below the median income in the state of Wyoming. So there's a big divergent sort of bifurcated economy here. And for most of the people here, real estate has gotten so expensive that it's hard for people to stay here and live here. 97% of our valley national park, national forest, elk refuge. So limited real estate, high demand for a desirable area to be means high prices. So companies that are growing have a tough time hiring people because over time, it's tough for them to afford to be able to stay here. So we also try and work with affordable housing and other organizations in the community and transportation to help with the commute from other outlying rural communities. We're also incredibly rural. If anyone's been here before and that is listening to this podcast, they'll know Jackson's small. It's the nearest, what I would call metro area is Idaho Falls, Idaho. It's an hour and a half, 90 miles away. It's probably 60 or 70,000 people. The nearest big city is Salt Lake City. That's 250 or 300 miles away. It's a 4 or 5 hour drive. So we're very rural. So those challenges of being able to maintain and retain good, educated, committed staff is difficult. On the flip side, because we're a desirable place to be, we've got over-educated folks here that are underemployed in what they do. And so the opportunity for companies, startups, and growth companies to find good people in this neck of the woods is incredible. So I would say that's really probably our number one biggest challenge is how can we make sure that we've got a thriving middle class and a diverse economy and the ability for people to make a living and a life here that are kind of the support for these growing companies.
Great. So you see a lot of different applications there. It's quite varied. If you had to pick one or two sectors that you would recommend to investors to pursue, what would you put at the top of the list or the top two at the list?
Well, I think clearly tech and software is where we're heading in the future. AI as well. We haven't seen as much in the AI space here. We've seen a couple of things, but software and technology, people here are very resourceful. And because we're remote geographically, I think we've had to develop reliance on some of that technology and software in order to make things work. And that's clearly an area where I think there's no doubt growth is going to take place. But we also deal with a lot of recurring revenue recreational companies, for lack of a better way of putting it, again, because of our location. And I think that there's still a big movement amongst people to have a high quality of life, to recreate. And whether it's Mountainist or a snowboard company called Franco Snow Shapes, which builds probably the preeminent high-end snowboards in the world that's based here, or Sego Skis, another ski company, or a company that I don't know if I can give out their name right now, but they're doing GPS-located, geofenced stories about traveling to different places. So you can listen on your phone as you're driving over a bridge in, the Tappan Zee Bridge in New York, or whether you're going to Grand Teton National Park, giving people experiences. Experiential companies, I think, are great. And we're comfortable with them in our neck of the woods. So those would be two areas, I think, very disparate, but where we think there's opportunity.
Sounds great. So in the last few minutes that we have here, what else should we cover that we haven't?
Well, again, Silicon Couloir, and I think we are a little bit of a unique model as an organization. We're not government focused and we're not private sector. We're a nonprofit charitable organization that has to operate in the public good. But we as an organization, we look at, to me, there's three different sort of main sectors of society, and I mentioned them. We know for sure, as much as I ran for office and wanted to be part of the public sector to help, we know for sure that the public sector will never be cutting edge. It will never really stick its neck out because, frankly, politicians want to stay elected. They don't want to be ahead of the curve. They're going to lag. They're not going to lead. Nonprofits tend to fill gaps. So if someone in the arts sees a need that government or the private sector isn't filling, a nonprofit might spring up in the arts in that person's neck of the woods. It's the private sector that has the ability and is closest to the people and its customers and its community, because if they don't do it right, they're going to go out of business, if they're not in touch with their community and their customers and their stakeholders. So we at Silicon Couloir think that you can do good by doing well financially, and you can do well financially by doing good in your community and by your people. So we have a little bit of a different approach, I think, but it's one that we think is critical to the future. And in these days where pandemics are worldwide and other things happen, making sure that you're taking care and stewarding your community while you're growing a diverse economy that takes care of the people within it is super important. So I think that's who we are, and we're proud of it, and we try to stick to our values, and it's been successful for us, and we hope it's been successful for the companies that we support.
Well, you have a great motto there. So how best for listeners to get back in touch with you?
Well, I think you've got my email address that you can post on your website, and my LinkedIn address and our URL, but it's siliconcouloir.com. Couloir is Couloir. By the way, on a quick story for skiers that are in your audience, Corbett's Couloir is maybe the most famous ski run in North America. It's at Jackson Hole Ski Resort. It's a very scary thing to try and ski. And so we played off, obviously Silicon Valley and then our local Corbett's Couloir to come up with the name of Silicon Couloir, because we wanted to let people know, yeah, we're about entrepreneurship, but we're going to do it the Teton County Jackson way. So www.siliconcouloir.com. My name, Gary, at siliconcouloir.com is my email address. You can look up my profile on LinkedIn. Would love to touch base with any of the folks that are interested in touching base with me and finding out more or have something of interest for us to show. Always looking for new ideas, always looking for good people and good stuff.
Well, great. We'll put those in the show notes. Want to thank you for joining us today and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
Really appreciate it, Hall. Thank you so much. Stay safe and healthy and keep it going.
Thanks, Gary.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org.
Halti Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for the basis of investment decisions.